Hey guys, it's JM here, Disciple Dojo, and Hurricane Florence is actually churning outside here in Charlotte, but not too bad. I'm looking out at the back deck and nothing's blown by me, so we're okay. I wanted to do another edition while I'm in here, hopefully the power won't go out, of the segment that we've started, Pages with Sages, and I want to talk about my favorite chapter or my favorite scene in my favorite book of all time. If you know me, those of you that know me know my favorite book of all time, fiction book, is Watership Down by Richard Adams. And this is actually a copy that my girlfriend at the time, who I am still very good friends with, got me for Christmas. And it's a signed edition, which is pretty awesome because just literally a few days after she gave this to me, Richard Adams passed away. So this is one of the last, or I don't know, probably one of the last signed editions of the book. But Watership Down, for those of you that have read the book, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But just a quick recap, if you haven't, is the story of a group of rabbits, and they like literal rabbits, and they have to set out on this journey because their home ends up getting destroyed. And in it, they have this whole rabbit society, and the two of the main characters. The main character is a rabbit named Hazel, and he's kind of the epitome of like a good leader. He's the one you want to follow. He's not the biggest, he's not the strongest, he's not the smartest. There are rabbits that are each of those things. And his little brother Fiver, who is kind of like the prophetic or the oracle in the story. He's the one that can see danger. He would be the role of the prophet. And so Hazel is the leader. Fiver's the prophet, and then the third character, or one of the other characters in the book is this character named Flaley. And Flaley in the rabbit language in the book literally means fur head, and he's called that because he has a tuft of fur on his head. So his other nickname is Bigwig. And so Bigwig is of the group of rabbits that have to leave and go set out on this epic journey, which for us would only be, a couple of miles. But for them, it's just like the Iliad or the Odyssey or whatever. It's just massive. So they have to go and find a new place to live and take with them this whole group of rabbits, who some of them are gifted in some things, but some are just scared, and some have lived in a hutch their whole lives and don't know how to actually be wild rabbits. And there's so many adventures, and there's all kinds of things. They have to look out for snares, they have to look out for foxes and badgers and dogs and people and roads and cars, and it's one of the most epic adventures you'll ever read. But it entirely takes place within like this little hillside in England, and the characters are all rabbits, and it's just brilliant. But okay, regardless though, there's a scene one of the climactic moments of the book. Bigwig, the muscle character, Hazel, has gone off. The rabbits, this group of rabbits, they're being attacked by another group of rabbits who are led by an incredibly fearsome general named Woundwort. And General Woundwort is this big rabbit who's been in many fights, many battles. He's got scars. He's a tough rabbit, and he rules his rabbit warren with an iron fist. A very militaristic leader, he's a dictator. He's a fearsome dictator, but he's also a mighty warrior, which is why the other rabbits follow him in fear. And so there's a scene where Woundwort's leading his group of rabbits to overtake our group of rabbits and to bring them back into captivity, and back into to build up their own strength and their own society. And so Hazel Hazel, Bigwig, and Fiver, and Buckthorn, and all of the other rabbits, they're defending. And it's this epic battle where I'm using the word epic a lot because it's such a great description of this book. It's so epic. There's this battle, and they're trying to protect their warren. So all of the does and the little ones are dug down in the warren, and there's runs that lead out in the different holes so rabbits can come in and go out and eat and stuff. And so they've blocked up all the runs except for this one, and Fiver and Hazel have a plan, and so Hazel has to leave. The leader has to leave in the middle of this battle to go, and we don't know what the plan is yet, but he tells Bigwig, stay here and protect this run. This is the run. If Woundwort gets in, they're done. And so Bigwig, he stays, and he barricades himself. The run is just big enough where he can fit. So the rabbits, he can use his body to block the enemies from being able to get in. And so the scene is, Woundwort and his other rabbit troops, they're called the Ausla. That's like the rabbit military patrol, or the rabbit military police. They're kind of the rabbit soldiers. And so Woundwort brings his Ausla, and they're attacking this warren. And so the scene is where Woundwort goes down into the run, and he and Bigwig just fight, and they go at it. I mean, the descriptions of their fighting is just cool, because it's literal rabbit fighting. They're not throwing punches or kicks. They're like, on their back, biting ears, using their hind legs to kick and scratch and claw. And it's how you'd imagine if two wild rabbits got in a fight. And so I want to just pick up the scene where this is like in the climactic section of the book. It's not the climax, but it's leading up to it, and it's chapter 47, called "The Sky Suspended," for those of you that know the book. But in it, Woundwort and Thlaeli, Bigwig, have just come to basically a standstill. Bigwig's not moving. He's entrenched. He's bloody. He's battered. And Woundwort is bloodied and battered, and he's never experienced this. I mean, he's the man, the rabbit, and he's never had a fight like this. And so he's actually kind of starting to rethink some things, like, okay, how are we going to attack this warren if Bigwig's in the way? Maybe we can convince him to come out, or if not, we'll just send we'll dig out the other runs, and eventually we'll get to him. But he's frustrated by Bigwig, and because Bigwig's the only rabbit that he's ever encountered that could actually stand up to Woundwort in physical battle. And so I love this scene. I'm going to read this. It picks up, he says, "This run's open, sir," said Groundsel, "but the other will take a bit longer. I'm afraid it's heavily blocked." "One's enough," said Woundwort, "as long as they can come down it. We can bring them in and start getting that end wall down." He was about to go up the run himself when he found Vervain beside him. For a moment he thought he was going to say that he had killed Thlaeli. A second glance showed otherwise. I got some grit in my eye, sir," said Vervain. "I'll just get it out, and then I'll have another go at him." Without a word, Woundwort went back to the far end of the honeycomb. Vervain followed. The honeycomb's this section inside the warren, so they're underground in the tunnels, and the honeycomb's like this big. It's underneath the roots of trees, so it kind of makes this honeycomb pattern. Anyway, back to the story. Without a word, Woundwort went back to the far end of the honeycomb. Vervain followed. "You coward," said Woundwort in his ear. "If my authority goes, where will yours be in half a day? Aren't you the most hated officer in Ephrafa?" Ephrafa is the name of the other warren where they came from. "The rabbit's got to be killed." Once more he climbed on the earth pile. Then he stopped. Vervain and Thistle, raising their heads to peer past him from behind, saw why. Thlaeli had made his way up the run and was crouching immediately below. Blood had matted the great thatch of fur on his head, and one ear, half severed, hung beside his face. He was breathing slowly and heavy. "You'll find it much harder to push me back from here, General," he said. With a sort of weary, dull surprise, Woundwort realized that he was afraid. He did not want to attack Thlaeli again. He knew with flinching certainty that he was not up to it. And who was, he thought? Who could do it? No, they would have to get by some other way, and everyone would know why. "Thlaeli," he said, "we've unblocked a run out here. I can bring in enough rabbits to pull down this wall in 4 places. Why don't you come out?" Thlaeli's reply, when it came, was low and gasping, but perfectly clear. "My chief rabbit has told me to defend this run, and until he says otherwise, I shall stay here." "His chief rabbit?" Vervain said, staring. It had never occurred to Woundwort or any of his officers that Thlaeli was not the chief rabbit of his warren. Yet what he said carried immediate conviction. He was speaking the truth, and if he was not the chief rabbit, then somewhere close by there must be another, stronger rabbit who was. A stronger rabbit than Thlaeli? Where was he? What was he doing at this moment? Woundwort became aware that Thistle was no longer behind him. I love this scene. I get chill bumps reading it. I just got chill bumps now. And the reason I love it is because Woundwort and Thistle and Vervain and his other rabbits, all they can see when they look at a society is the leader is the strong one, the tough one, the one who can fight the best. And so when they encounter Bigwig, Flaley, they encounter this rabbit who's strong, who's tough, who's pretty smart actually, and who can fight better than anybody. And they just assume he's the leader. It never occurs to them that Flaley, even though he is the strongest, could have loyalty and devotion to another leader, to another rabbit who is significantly weaker physically than him, but who rules because of his ability to inspire rather than his ability to inspire fear. And that's what I love that so much about this scene, because what it shows is, it's a perfect illustration. Leadership in our society, so many times we just assume, leadership means toughest, especially if you're of that mindset. Like, somebody's got to be tough on crime, tough on terrorism, tough on this, tough on that. Go to a martial arts academy, and the toughest person is the leader. And what you realize is that leadership is about the ability to inspire greatness in other people. And it's so cliche. I mean, there's a million memes on Instagram about this, but this to me is such a moving depiction of that you have Bigwig, who is genuinely committed with his dying breath to obeying the orders of his chief rabbit. And his chief rabbit is Hazel, who's this unassuming, basically an everyday type. But his key component that makes him such a great leader in the eyes of his followers is he will never ask them to do something he won't do. And he will lead the way in taking risks. And the fact is that at this moment in the story, he's off doing something that's so unbelievably risky that when he comes back, it's pandemonium in a good way. But certainly not going to spoil the ending of the book. And if you've never read the book, you're probably like, I checked out of this 5 minutes ago. But if you have read the book, you know the scene I'm talking about, and it probably gave you chills when you read it too, because of Bigwig's character over the course of the book and how he develops from just kind of this meathead jock, tough guy at the beginning of the story to the epitome of the noble retainer, the samurai in service of his lord, his daimyo, his shogun, his chief rabbit. So I love this book so much, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. But that scene in particular I wanted to share with you guys, because it's super powerful. Maybe I'm the only one that feels this way. I don't know. What do you think? Share it in the comments on this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts.